I mean, we got nothing to whine about today. Got nothing to complain about, nothing to bitch about, nothing to whine about. The Jays didn't play last night. Traffic, we're taking the train, so it doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing to complain about today.
It's going to rain tomorrow.
Oh, I mean, that's the remnants of the hurricane, right? Coming up here. But, this is Blair and Barker for a Tuesday. Off day last night for the Blue Jays. They'll get back at it tonight, 9:45 first pitch against the San Francisco Giants. You say Kikuchi against Blake Snell. You got that look in your face. It says you want to say some smart-ass thing. So go ahead and do it. Just get it out of the way. Get it out of the way. No, you got that look.
I don't have anything. I don't have anything.
Well, you just had that look. I know your looks.
You do?
You were going to say something. Just feel free. It's like Swing Away Tuesday. Just feel free.
Is it really?
Swing away.
Never been a part of those.
Nothing, eh? Shai Davidi's going to join us in a few minutes.
I'm feeling a 5-1 in the next 6 games.
Yeah,
that's what I'm feeling. 5-1.
For who?
For the Blue Jays.
Oh, okay. Shai Davidi will join us in a few minutes. Greg Hamilton is coach and national teams director at Baseball Canada. He'll be along. We'll take a look at the Canadians eligible for the draft, which starts Sunday and ends in about another month after that. No, it actually ends on Tuesday. And Andrew Baggarly, who covers the Giants for The Athletic, will be along. And we'll talk a little bit about the Willie Mays celebration of life yesterday. And we'll also take a sneak peek, a look ahead to the San Francisco Giants. And we've got a chance. We got tickets to give away to see the Jays and Tigers at the Rogers Center on Saturday. But without further ado, actually, that's wrong. It's adieu. The French is adieu, which means something different than adieu. Let's bring in Shai Davidi, our MLB insider with Sportsnet.
There he is.
Look at him.
Hey, guys,
hotel room.
what's going on?
Maid's already been in the hotel room. Hey?
No, just I tidied it up for you guys.
Really? You're one of those guys?
You guys.
Please tell me you're not one of those guys that makes his own bed in the hotel and leaves the do not disturb sign. Okay.
Did you go for a run today?
No.
Yeah, that's the most important
not
thing.
yet. I'm going to go after this.
Are you? Oh, I mean, San Francisco's. Do you do the hills or do you go down by the water to run?
I'm sort of in the center of the downtown course. I'm not sure what's going to be a good route here. Just looking at some of my window.
Go in packs. That's what I say. I suggest packs. That's how you do it. Okay?
Yeah. Maybe I might just hit the treadmill too.
I was going to say the treadmill's safe, or take an Uber someplace. How far is Berkeley from there? Berkeley's pretty safe, I hear.
Yeah, that's a good hike. Yeah,
that is a bit of a hike. Want to talk to you. Obviously, we got a lot to talk to you about. The Jays into the stretch before the All-Star game, but your piece yesterday on kind of taking a look at what the Blue Jays could have in place next season, because let's face it, our focus is as much on next season as it is on this season right now, and sort of what they may need to add and how they would look with the obvious subtractions taken away. And yeah, my first reaction was, woof.
No, yeah,
no bueno. That was my first reaction. I'm not certain I'm ready for life with an Alejandro Kirk, Brian Serven pairing behind the plate. But I mean, all kidding aside, Shai, first of all, let's deal with, do you think both Vladdy and Bo are back next year, or do you think one of them are gone? Have you changed your mind at all? I would argue, or I would ask you if you've changed your mind in the last month or month and a half at all about that.
My mind hasn't been changed. And ultimately, I think it's going to be on another club to change the minds of the Blue Jays on that. Because as things stand, all things being equal, I don't think right now there's a pathway to them to a meaningful enough return to either one of those guys to make them want to do it. And if you're going to want to compete next year, I mean, good luck doing it without one of those two guys, unless you make very, very substantial changes and additions to help compensate for that loss. So everything I've heard, all the suggestions that I've heard to this point indicate that those two will be back. Another team could certainly present something to the Blue Jays that makes such a compelling case that they can't say no. And look, all bets are off once we get to the offseason, because who knows what the situation will look like then. And a number of factors could change between here and the offseason. So I think I'm speaking on what we know with the situation that's in place right now. I'd expect both of them to be back. And then the Blue Jays will have the ability to make decisions on both of those guys in season in terms of depending on how things go in 2025, and then make decisions for beyond that.
Shai, do you think that there is a chance that either at this deadline or perhaps in the offseason, the Jays may try to add somebody else's, I don't want to say prospect, but I'm going to throw out a name like Jordan Walker, that class of a player, somebody else who is another team's top prospect or another team's major league ready potential cornerstone as a means of starting that next window of opportunity?
Sure, I think they'd love that. Just how are you going to get that guy?
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the problem. Like, teams aren't looking to give away players like that. And if you look at what the Washington Nationals did and getting Abrams and Gore and Wood, I mean, you got to give up Juan Soto to make that happen. And the Blue Jays, don't have as good as Guerrero and Bichette are. They're not Juan Soto caliber, and there's not enough control to justify that kind of return. So that would be the ideal. And really, that idea, that notion was really behind the genesis of the piece that Ben Nicholson-Smith and I wrote yesterday was, this question of sort of what to do right now, what to do next year. It's really, where are you in 25 and where are you in 2026? Because that's what the decision has to be. Like, who is going to be that next cornerstone? Who's going to be that next, generational type of player? Is it Aravis Martinez? Right now, the way things are progressing in the Blue Jays farm system, he looks like the best bet for that. And he's missing half a season right now on a PED suspension. And there's no one in terms of being relatively close to the major leagues, who's that caliber, who could potentially bridge to another generation or create a new core. So that's the fundamental question that's facing the Blue Jays, both now and in 26 and beyond. And, they don't have that player. How do you get that player? That's a massive question. Really, it's probably going to have to come in the draft.
Shai, any chance they run this back? They sign they sign Danny Jansen, they bring back the same front office. They go out and add a mediocre bat, exactly what they've done the last two off seasons. Any chance they start continuing to do this? Can they? It sounds to me like they have a plan. Like the people that you've talked to, a little bit of a plan here on what they're trying to get done, maybe at the trade deadline, maybe going into the end of the season, into the off season. Anything this team can do to change the plan, I think, is the question.
Well, I think in terms of running it back, I think we'd have to see an epic comeback for running it back to be on the table. Now, could the Blue Jays do something like trade Yusei Kikuchi to a contender at the trade deadline and then re-sign him in the offseason? I'd say that could be on the table. Or could they do the same thing, something similar with Danny Jansen? Sure. But I think right now what's the plan, quote unquote, is just the general idea: we're going to compete next year. We're not tearing this down. We still see a window of opportunity. Now, what are you doing with that? How are you making that happen? That I don't know how specifically there is a plan in place, and there needs to be. And like I said before, it needs to be about 25 and 26. Right? Because, the roster is taking some major hits this offseason, but it's really potentially falling off a cliff after 25. And so how are you managing against that? How are you mitigating against what could be some very bleak times in 26 and beyond, because the farm system isn't ready to contribute meaningful enough pieces to ensure that doesn't happen? And different from where the Blue Jays were, say, in the 16 season when you were managing to get to Vlad and Bo, there is no Vlad and Bo now on the horizon. And that is what's really scary about 26 and beyond. So I don't know that there is a specific plan saying, okay, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And I think we can see potentially a number of changes. And you'd have to think that some of this will start in the front office after the trade deadline. And there'll be a lot of hard questions that are going to be asked beyond that.
Shai, do you think Davis Schneider and Spencer Horowitz are part of the future?
Right now, they have to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure what alternatives the Blue Jays have. And to be honest, like, they should be. Now, we can debate how much role, how prominent they should be in the lineup, things of that nature. But both of them have shown that they can be contributors to a certain degree at the big league level. Now, can they go beyond that? You know, for both of those guys, they've already far exceeded the expectations the organization had for them, right? I mean, these guys were drafted 24th and 28th rounds. You know, they weren't sort of counted on to be top prospects. So the fact that they're here is full credit to them. And, you know, with guys like that, I never want to put ceiling on them because they just keep finding ways to adapt and to be better, and the way that they grind and stuff like that. But how prominent a role, I think, is the question. But, you know, they're, for a number of reasons, starting with, you know, they're just going to need people who are playing. You know, they are definitely going to be part of the
future. Shai, you think this would be a hard fix? I mean, Blair's made this point about the bullpen. Like, you bring in some guys, you spend a little money on your bullpen, you solidify the 9th inning, the 8th inning, the 7th inning. You can do that, right? You bring back Jordan Romano. He fits in there somewhere. If he's not your 9th inning guy, that's fine, right? You can throw him in the 7th and 8th inning. Is it a hard fix? If you bring Bo and Vladdy back, you bring back an impactful bat, a guy that can carry your team for, say, 2 weeks, so Bo and Vladdy are not trying to do. They went down the road of expecting Bo and Vladdy to carry this team for long periods of time. They know now, like, the blueprint is here. Do you think this is a tough, long fix?
Well, in terms of 25, it's absolutely a tough fix because, look, if it was just a couple moves away, the Blue Jays wouldn't be in the spot that they're in right now, right? Mm-hmm. So there are going to be multiple moves that are necessary to make this team legitimately competitive in the American League East for next year. And beyond 25, it's an even more major fix because half your big league roster is going to be potentially eligible for free agency now. So you can sign some of those guys, but at that point, you're just maintaining floor. And you're keeping players who, in some cases, are going to be aging and perhaps aging away from their peaks. And so they're entering the decline phase. So you can't count on the same level of production from a good chunk of your roster. Now, you do have some upward potential with a few of the younger players, but you know, does one equal out the other? I'm not sure. So I don't think this is an easy fix in any stretch of the imagination. It's an easier fix for 25 to try and have a competitive run then than it is beyond 26. But again, there are some huge questions facing the franchise beyond 25. And as always, it begins with, what are you going to do with Bo and Vlad?
Yeah. Shai, have we, I can put my hand up here because I think we've talked about this, but probably not as much as we should have. You know, Danny Jansen's a free agent at the end of the year. You know, I think we kind of know what Danny Jansen is now. I'm looking at the free agent market. I don't see. I mean, I don't think Alejandro Kirk can be your everyday catcher. I think we know that by now. I don't necessarily see an everyday catcher on the free agent market. I don't think they have one in the organization, and I guess that goes down in your to-do list when it comes to making a trade. But is this a bigger issue than maybe we've sort of, you know, imagined? Because to me, that's a huge hole.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you feel about Alejandro Kirk, right? And do you still believe that there's some upside there and he could get back to some degree of the form he had during that All-Star season in 22? Or is this what you believe Alejandro Kirk is going to be moving forward? And if you believe that Alejandro Kirk, that all-star guy, is still in there, and certainly the defensive metrics have been improving on him. He's made a number of gains in the way he's handling pitchers. His pitch framing is absolutely elite. His throwing has picked up a little bit. You can make the case that defensively, this is a much better player. Can he get back to being an offensive contributor? You know, maybe he doesn't have to be exactly who he was in 22 at the plate, but just someone who's somewhat of a threat. Then you're having a different conversation. You need more of a complementary catcher. But if you believe this is Alejandro Kirk's future and that he's essentially a defensive player and he's not going to give you much offense, and you wonder about his durability, then you need a more active partner. And is it someone like a Danny Jansen? McCann is someone who I kind of look at and think that could be an interesting fit as a complement to Kirk, depending on what you're doing behind the plate. But again, I think that it all begins with your evaluation, and I don't have a clear sense that what the Blue Jays think. Alejandro Kirk is still young, so there's reason to think that he's going to come around. And again, we've seen him make gains defensively in the way that he's handling the staff. So perhaps he can get that offensive piece back as well. And we're having a vastly different conversation at that point.
Shai, you're around the team. We've been talking a lot about George Springer's resurgence, and I'm wondering how real you think this is.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that there are some mechanical changes that are behind it, some adjustments that he's made with the focus on trying to get himself in a better position to handle velocity. And so it's not just he's run into a few pitches, right? I think if it was 3-4 games, you're like, okay, that's nice. But it's been sustained. I think you want to see it be sustained a little bit more. But there's reason to think that he has done some different things. He's adjusted some things in his pregame routine. He's adjusted some things in terms of how he's getting set up to help him identify pitches a little bit better and get the barrel moving a little bit faster. Essentially, just be set up more effectively to handle velocity. So, there was an issue that was identified. It was diagnosed, and a remedy was put into place. That remedy appears to be working. Now you want to see it play out over a longer stretch. But again, if it was just sort of a few games and sort of whatever, not a big deal, that's one thing. But this looks to be a little bit more sustained. And, I think the other thing I always fall back to is that bottom line is, even though he's 34, this is an immensely talented player. Immensely talented players always have the opportunity to figure some things out and make some adjustments. I think George wants to make those adjustments. He's been, the number of times that I've talked to him, accountable for how he's played and said, I need to be better. I need to find ways to contribute more. He's taking responsibility for that. And, I think that there is some effort to do that. So that gives you at least some reason to think that it might be sustainable over an extended period.
Shai, you talked to Bo a lot. What's his mindset like? I'm not going to ask you about the mechanics. I don't think anybody knows. He's just got a lot of parts moving around, and he swings at everything. Like, until, for me anyway, at least right now, consistently, maybe he doesn't chase as much. Maybe that will give him a better chance. That'll get him in a better mental mindset. You talk to him a ton. Where do you think he's at? I've never asked you this, but where's his aura? Like, just how's it feel around him when you walk up and ask him a question?
I think it feels like it is around a lot of Blue Jays players where there's a lot of frustration and a lot of disappointment. And I think with Bo, he is so hyper competitive and he feels so much responsibility to carry the team that it probably affects him more than he's let on, or more than he's been willing to admit. I think back to the beginning of the season where, he talked about, I think this was the first week, it might have been New York, if memory serves, where he said, I'm going to speak for myself, but when guys around you aren't hitting, you try to do a little bit more. You want to be the guy to try to help the team. That was in week 1 of the season. And here we are in July and the Blue Jays are where they are. And I would think that feeling has just amplified a number of times for him. And so, I generally think with him, when you see him chasing, that's him trying to force some things. There are times where he maybe hasn't seen pitchers as well as he might have been. And maybe that calf thing was bothering him for a little bit longer than we might have known and he might have let on. And, I think he was reluctant to say anything because he didn't want to take himself out of the mix for a period of time. And that ended up having to happen. And, knowing him, that's not something that he would have been happy about. But I think there are a lot of factors that have kept him from being at his best. And that's got to be wearing on him and the losing too. I think more than anything, he just wants to win. He doesn't care about his numbers as much, about as long as the team is winning. The fact that the Blue Jays aren't winning, I'm sure, eats at him. He understands that his numbers are a factor in that. And, I think that's leading to a lot of what we see around him.
It's a great answer.
Shy, we're going to let you run, man. And I do mean that, run.
Should be a good one, guys.
Don't do it.
Absolutely. Take care, Shy. Be
See
well.
you, buddy. Take care.
Safe travels.
See ya.
Have a great night, guys.
Thank you. Shy Davidi, our MLB insider with Sportsnet. And if you know Shy, when Shy runs, Shy goes for a run.
Yeah,
he's
long ones.
Yeah.
Personal records runs.
Yes.
That's the way he does it.
He's not like me with a 5K on the treadmill.
No, headband and the short shorts.
I do not.
And the high socks.
Those
and
socks are for...
for veins. We get it.
Well, they're not for veins. You make it sound like they're for veins. No,
that's what it's for.
Circulation.
It's for veins.
It's for
like
circulation.
It's to let to make sure everything's kept in the right spots. That's what it's for.
I can't wait to see you when you're old.
Yeah,
in like
ripped.
another 3 years.
3 years.
I can't wait to see you when you're old. You were going to be you were going to be the very definition of a bitter old man.
How about it?
Oh, you will.
Am I there
be.
already?
Well, you're bitter, but
close.
I mean, you're pretty damn close. You're more bitter than I was at your age.
Hey,
change the subject.
But I wonder what Shy. Listen to the Shy talk there. I just wonder about all the unknowns. Maybe there's not any unknowns with the front office, but boy, we sure got to feel like there is. I wonder if that has any outcome of what they do or don't do.
Unknown in terms of who's going to be making the decisions?
I mean, is Mark going to do all the heavy lifting at the trade deadline? Like things like that. I don't maybe there's not a bunch of unknown. I mean, they got like 4 GMs, so it's like. I don't know. Like it's just is.
I
going forward. Does it matter? That I think's the question.
There are a lot of voices in that room.
There's a ton. There's a lot.
There's the assistant GMs in there. Joe Sheehan, Mike Muroff, Jeremy Reesler. They have a fair amount to do with what goes on with that team. I just don't think it's necessarily Ross. But listen. I would be, honest to God, I would be lying if I said to you that I categorically, absolutely, positively, 100% know what Mark's role is in baseball stuff. I have always been led to believe that he doesn't have much of a say in who goes on the IL, when do we bring this guy up, obviously who gets promoted from AA to AAA. Things like that are dealt with.
The George Springer signings is what he is his hand.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that has to go to ownership to, with the big things. But I don't know. He's got to have some input in things.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's intriguing with it almost got a bigger feel that they get closer to running sort of the same kind of cast of characters back instead of
I don't
blowing this thing up and
what would make you say that?
I don't know. It's like
nobody's made trades.
No, I know, but
at this point,
it's got the feel of what are you going to get for him? Like are you just doing it to be doing it to say you did something?
No, I mean
that's basically why you'd be doing it. Getting something for Jimmy Garcia, Chad Green, maybe Yusei Kikuchi because of the Astros, the Yankees, those kind of things like that.
You're looking at
Danny Jansen getting you something.
You're looking at it the wrong way.
You want to make your future better.
Well, yeah, exactly.
How are you making it better is the point.
Well, I mean, if you're trading, first of all, you have to know if guys aren't coming back. If Jimmy Garcia is not coming back next year and Danny Jansen's not coming back next year, do you want to get the draft pick for Danny Jansen? Or would you rather get a bullpen arm that can help you next year? What would you rather do?
I don't know. Depends on what the bullpen arm looks like.
Well, would you rather get the draft pick given this team's record of drafting? You'd rather take the draft pick. Okay, you can have your freaking draft pick. Me, I'd rather take a raggedy-ass spaghetti arm reliever.
It gets back to that who's running it. That's the thing, right? That's the big unknown is the track record with who they draft has not been the greatest.
But
Kevin, if there's somebody else doing it, then
Well, there's going to be nobody else.
Maybe you got a little bit,
This is why you don't make the big decisions with Bo and Vladdy in season.
Yeah, I don't see that happening unless somebody comes.
That's what I just said. That's why you don't make the big decisions with Bo and Vladdy in season. Do you want Ross making the call on Bo and Vladdy?
I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
All right. I think we're all probably in agreement on that. So, but trading Danny Jansen for something? Sure.
I guess.
Trading Jimmy Garcia for something? Sure.
I mean, it's an easy way for them to say, at least, we did something.
Well, no, it's what teams do. It's what teams do. If teams are going to lose a player and payroll is no big deal, you go out and add something that can help you. So you know what? Maybe get another Genesis Cabrera. Maybe get another Trevor Richards. Rowdy Tellez got you Trevor Richards and Adam Simber. That's not a bad deal. Did you think when they traded Rowdy? Did you think when they traded Rowdy Tellez?
Do they have a Rowdy Tellez to trade?
When they traded Rowdy Tellez, Rowdy Tellez was not.
He's a left-handed hitter with power, trading him to a team that needed power. Do they? I mean, Danny
Jansen is way more valuable.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Pushing the right button and tricking the right umpire. That's a big deal. I get it. But hitting the 3-run homer in the 8th inning is a big deal too. So, yeah, what I'm saying is the next 3 weeks will be very intriguing to see how much they are
boring
all
as
in.
hell.
Oh, we'll see.
No, of course they're going to be intriguing, but they're not. What do you mean? How much they're all in? They're not all in for this year. If they were all in for this year, you wouldn't have gone a month and a half without a closer.
That's fair.
I mean, you wouldn't. If you would think if you're all in and you were playing games against the Astros and the Yankees, teams you got to contend against, I would think you'd want to help your manager.
There you go.
If you want to win this year.
Yeah. I think you nailed it.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
But when it comes to the other, John Morosi said yesterday, and David Sampson said the same thing last week, and I completely get it. Trade your pitchers at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Don't make those big position player deals at the deadline because you're probably not going to get value for it. Because if a contending team wants to give you wants Bo Bichette, the idea they're going to give you somebody who's ready for a major league roster, that may not necessarily be the case. So you trade your Yusei Kikuchis, you trade your Danny Jansen, a guy who might get you some, but you don't trade your big impactful position players.
Okay.
And I'll also tell you this, maybe Yusei Kikuchi brings you a guy in who figures in your catching pitcher next year. Because again, with all due respect to what Shai said, you seen anything that says Alejandro Kirk can catch 5 of 7 days and swing the bat at all?
I think that's the blueprint's there.
It is there. So you have to go into next year with a number one catcher.
Absolutely.
And they take a while to develop. Brian McCann, your idea of a number one catcher? He's a free agent that's out there. He's a guy they've had interest in the past. So anyhow, it'll be interesting. But I just, like I said, I don't know who makes the final decision here, and I really don't. I don't have an idea what they see when they see this team. I really don't, because if you honestly, truly thought that there was a chance of turning this thing around,
you would have fixed the pen.
You would have fixed the pen already.
Absolutely, because
that's not a heavy lift.
It's not.
That's not a heavy lift.
No, you give it an old college try anyway, and they haven't done that.
Greg Hamilton is manager of the Canadian National Junior Team, coach of the Canadian National Junior Team. He's also director of national teams at Baseball Canada. The baseball draft is Sunday. Can we expect to see any Canadians picked? Do the Nailers have another son? We don't know. I think because they've got Josh, Bo, and Miles have already been drafted. We'll find out next. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. Stop it. 9:45 will be the first pitch tonight from Oracle. Is it Oracle Park or Oracle Field in San Francisco? Oracle something. Unless they changed the name in the last hour, because they did. It's Oracle Park. By the way, tonight will be Vladdy Jr.'s 750th career game. He has 143 home runs. tied for second for a Blue Jays hitter in their first 750 games. Care to guess the number one is? And it ain't close.
I don't know.
Carlos Delgado, 170.
It's
Carlos,
predictable. He's a really good hitter.
Carlos Delgado only lost one Hall of Fame ballot. Like, seriously. He's a guy that will end up going in, and this we talked yesterday about the committee process. He's a guy I guarantee you gets in via
Guarantees a
bit
process. Strong.
No, the committee.
That's a guarantee. That's strong.
Committee process. His name will come up.
A really good player, though.
His name will come up, and he'll get in through the committee process because one, he deserves it. He was a great player.
He was.
Two, he has a lot of friends around the game.
Yep.
So anyhow,
well said.
There you go. The baseball draft is just around the corner, coinciding with All-Star festivities, et cetera, et cetera. Greg Hamilton is coach and director of national teams at Baseball Canada. He joins us on Blair and Barker. Greg, thanks so much for joining us today. We trust that you're doing well. Like, this is always an interesting time of the year for baseball fans and Canadian baseball fans. From your point of view, give us a couple of names, because I know you've gone online and we could see some names of players that are getting a fair amount of play in the States in terms of possibly being drafted. But give us a name of some guys we should be watching out for.
Yeah, I think certainly on the Canadian side, Brendan Lawson, very interesting kid. He's a Toronto-based kid. Physical, shortstop, probably maybe a third baseman as he moves along in pro ball, but at a high school shortstop. He's had a nice run down in the draft league. He's been with our national junior team. He's certainly a name that I think will get a lot of consideration reasonably early. There's a kid named Dante Nori out of Michigan with some Canadian roots, which is always exciting as we look forward to kind of WBC time. His father was with the Raptors and born in Canada. Kid that can really run in the outfield. A couple of Quebec kids, Emilian Petrie, shortstop, had a really nice year at University of Kentucky. A pitcher from Louisiana, Raging Cajuns out of Quebec City, named Louis-Philippe Langevin, and another arm out of Toronto I think is quite interesting, kid named Josiah Romeo, Toronto-based kid actually from Caledon, and committed to Florida State. Has been with our junior national team, also thrown in the draft league as well. So those would certainly be some names that would be of interest. And the kid that had a really good go at the University of Utah this year in Core Jackson.
Greg, as long as you've been doing this, how's it changed? How from this year till the first time you've been doing this, how has baseball in Canada changed when it just comes to this part of the year?
Well, I think the draft has changed dramatically, as you would know, in the sense of the rounds have been reduced. We're down to 20 now. It's changed a lot in terms of Canadian kids signing out of high school. I mean, the opportunities with 20 rounds versus the old 52, 54 round drafts, kind of the hard slotting, the reduced numbers in the minor league, reduced, levels or opportunity at the lower level to get in and kind of figure it out as a high school player. I mean, you've lost leagues like the Penn League and the Appalachian League and the Northwest and all those leagues where, Canadians could kind of get a start, get into the complex and then get out in sort of those short season leagues where they were, really up against younger players. But now you're forced to put a high school player if you want to get them into A-ball. A lot of times they're facing college kids, right? So they're not, they're less inclined, I think, to take the Canadian kid that's sort of toolsy and interesting but not refined, and just don't have a lot of places to put those players.
Greg, how about the conversation, because of what you just said, how about the conversation between you and players that's sort of on the bubble? Tougher conversations for you?
They are, because it's kind of two circumstances that are tricky on the development side, right? With the NCAA and the transfer portal. The average age of a player playing NCAA college baseball at the Division I level, certainly in those larger programs, has gone up dramatically. So, the ability to sign at a high school, get, time and reps as an 18-year-old Canadian, it's challenging because it's a hard cap with 160 players, and, the clock's ticking a lot quicker. And then you've got to be really careful on where you pick collegiately now, especially if you're sort of, going after those upper end programs with the transfer portal, I mean, you're going to be an 18, 19-year-old kid up against 24-year-olds, which is, again, not really a fair fight. So you got to pick wisely if you're going south, and be careful to kind of, bite above your prey grade a little bit to start. You got to kind of start a little bit smaller, I think, and be a little bit more careful or you get caught in numbers.
Greg, one of the kids that kind of interests me is Nathan Flewelling. He's a kid from Alberta. Are we seeing, I think in the past, a lot of times whenever we think of baseball in Canada and players drafted from Canada, we think typically of British Columbia, the area, in the, around Maple Ridge, Vancouver and all that. We think of Toronto and to a certain degree Quebec as well. Are we starting to see more kids from Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or, the Maritimes progress through the national program? Or is it still difficult for you to kind of identify those kids in a remote area? Because it is the country's so wide. I remember John Herdman talking one time about how he used to lose sleep as Canadian women's soccer coach because he said, there may be that girl in Brandon, Manitoba, he used as an example, that I may just not get to. And who knows? She could have turned out to be one of the best female players in Canada. Do you know what I'm saying? Is there still that thing at work with the different provinces?
There is. I mean, it's a little easier now in dealing with smaller provinces because sort of like youth sport has become very privatized in a lot of ways. There's a lot of academies that have sort of grown in Canada and grown in scale. And they're really aggressive in kind of recruiting kids from, certainly the smaller provinces. Many of those kids are going to those academies. So the days of a kid that's, tucked away somewhere in a smaller province that you just may not see or you kind of, fear that you might miss, they tend to pop up a little bit more in academies. You mentioned Alberta with Nathan, and, he's a really interesting kid, real physical kid, and catcher. We'll see whether he stays as a catcher, but he's certainly got a chance to. But the bat's really interesting, and I think he's got a chance to go pretty good in the draft as well this year. But the Alberta kids, there's some really good programs in terms of scale out there. You've got Okotoks and you got Vauxhall and the Weber Academy, and these are really big sort of programs with a lot of scale. So kids are popping up from the certainly the prairie provinces and down east, and many of them are ending up in these programs.
Greg, does it make it easier by the way the big league level has changed? By just, you mentioned the athleticism and, sort of the hard throwers now and the three true outcome players on the offensive side and the versatility when it comes to, just look at the Blue Jays, right? Guys playing second, third, left, like they want that versatility. Make it easier for you to sort of make up your mind quicker is the point, because it's such a big area to choose from and pick from.
Yeah, I mean, we try to look at, certainly our junior program, we try to look at it as about 95% development. So we look for physical, athletic kids and, kids that can project up, and then try to give them a really good schedule with really good, coaching and a good environment. And, you give them time to kind of grow and develop, and, with the idea of preparing them for college and pro ball. So still kind of look at it the same way in many ways. Let sort of the process down the road sort of move players around. You back to Russell Martin, who was an infielder in high school and obviously became a really good catcher. And, there's plenty of examples of that. I think for us, it's more just identifying those kids that have the tools and the physicality, athleticism, to play up, and then give them that environment to grow in the time frame we have them. And obviously the sorting out will happen a little bit more down the road when they get into pro ball and sometimes collegiately.
Greg, when Josh Naylor first showed up and you saw him, did you think that you had a potential all-star in your hands?
You know what? I hate answering yes to that because it makes it sound like I've figured the game out, and I'm not even close to having figured the game out. But you did pick the one player that, from a hitting perspective, I would have said that nothing would be really surprising.
Really?
And I'm certainly not a person that has a crystal ball or that's figured the game out at all. But he was so far advanced compared to anybody. I mean, he did things in grade 9, 10, 11. So we had him 4 years in a junior national team. I mean, he was hanging in as a kid that was basically 14 years old. He was hanging in against, closers from the United States on a U18 team in a world championship. So, I mean, he just did things he wasn't supposed to be doing. And, that bat was special from a really young age. I mean, you can make a case that he was the best hitter. I mean, take the other parts of the game out. But he was the best hitter in the world from the time he was a high school junior or senior, just based on who he did it against. I mean, he was handling, guys on rehab assignments when he was in grade 11 and grade 12 comfortably. So he's a pretty special hitter, as everybody's seeing.
Greg, I'm intrigued. How do you look at a hitter nowadays? Is there a checklist? Like, is it bat speed? Is it hitting velocity? Is it laying off a breaking ball? Is it being quiet with your lower half? Is it all the above? Like, when you watch a hitter, Jeff mentioned Naylor. I mean, that's sort of the high end of, I'm close to no-brainer as you're going to get. But is there a checklist that you would go through when you go to a hitter? Because I'm very intrigued. It's different for every sort of hitting person or guru, or the Blue Jays, me and Jeff talk about all the time, have a bazillion of them. Like, and all of them I've talked to have a different answer for everything, right? There's not, I don't think, one right answer, but I'm very intrigued because you see so many. There's got to be sort of a checklist that you would go through that would tell you this guy's going to have a little bit better chance than other guys are going to have.
Yeah, I mean, Naylor, like in our world, right? The Naylors, as you would know, I mean, he was different, and you get into some of the ones that just sort of slap you in the face because they just have great bat to ball skills and they can hit at a very young age and really good feel for the barrel, and they're physical and they project. So I think for us it's more because we're looking at with our younger team, we're looking at 15-year-olds, 15 and 16-year-olds. Yeah. So to say that you kind of have a crystal ball and for sure, you don't. But I think it's looking at players that, again, that are athletic, that project to have some physicality going forward. I mean, do their hands work as hitters? Because certainly mechanically their swings probably don't work real early, but is there the ability to kind of project when you get that swing synced up and, lower half and upper half are together, which, again, we see a lot of really crude kids. So that's, they're really not synced up from the lower half to the upper half. But, again, do the hands work? Is there an athlete there? Is there somebody that's got the ability to be physical enough? And I don't always say physical has to be 6'4". I mean, are you physical and athletic, and can you make adjustments? And, can you, project to do those things going forward? So with our younger group, that's really kind of what we're looking for. Obviously, if you see strength and, present day strength, which you would have saw in Naylor when he was young, that's great. But, I go back to a Mike Saunders, you didn't necessarily see that. You saw a gangly kid that, there was a lot of swing and miss when he was in high school. And, but again, there was athleticism, there was a big frame, there were hands that worked, there was a swing that when he was on time, the ball jumped. And, I think then it's just kind of giving them those experiences. And as you would know, it's protecting them from, wanting to give up around the failure that just comes day in and day out when you're a hitter.
That's a great answer.
Greg, is it easier? This is probably an unfair question, so I'm going to apologize in advance. But is it easier for a pitcher to impress you than a hitter right away? Like if you're watching somebody for the first time, is it easier to impress you by what I'm throwing than the way I am as a hitter? Because as you mentioned, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, I imagine you've seen a ton of different batting stances and different mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, the arm is a lot easier to pick out, right? It either works or it doesn't work. And, you see that nice clean arm and it works. And, you kind of see that it jumps at you. You can project that pretty quickly. But I always say on the hitting side, it's, take away those sort of exceptions to the rule. And, again, as we all know in the conversation here, I mean, it's the ability to deal with failure and the ability to kind of, keep going at it day in and day out and not get defined by the failure aspect of it. In many ways, it allows players to, to get there as hitters. I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe if you've got, kind of some physicality and, basic projectability on the strength side, some athleticism, and you're long on desire and willing to kind of get at it every day, and the people around you don't panic and they're willing to kind of, work through the process of developing as a hitter, I think, you can really make some strides as a hitter. And but again, will the player give in to failure? Does the player, it's hard, right? I mean, and I'm certainly not the expert in saying it's hard. I've just seen how hard it is, and I appreciate how hard it is. And I think in development, sometimes, even now when we're kind of measuring things and looking at things really early, I think we can kind of get ahead of ourselves and trying to say that we've figured out which player can and which player can't. I think that's a danger in having maybe too much information or too many metrics. It's, is that exit velo a function of, the player's true upside, or is it Is it pitch selection? Is it where he is physically? Is the swing not synced up yet? And then there's a mental side where you start feeling and pressing and, and all that stuff that comes into it. So I think, to answer it quickly, I haven't, but, I think the arm is a lot easier to pick out.
Greg, really good of you to do this as always. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thanks for what you do.
Guys as well.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah,
well.
see you, buddy.
Yep.
Greg Hamilton, coach and director of national teams at Baseball Canada. Just about everything really good about baseball in Canada. A lot of it goes back to Greg Hamilton.
Absolutely.
And his ability to take 15 and 16-year-old kids. And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
When these kids go down to the Dominican Republic, they're facing kids who are getting paid.
Yeah.
Sometimes they face guys who are rehabbing. Who the hell knows? You're in a minor. You're playing an exhibition game at a minor league complex in Florida. You don't know who's going to show up.
Nope.
It is remarkable the success they've had, and it's kind of cool now that you're starting to see kids from other parts of the country. And there's a baseball league in Western Canada that seems to be doing really well, and they've done a lot of funky marketing things and doing a lot of stuff on social. So it's that is intriguing though, because Greg Hamilton's kind of when you think about it, major league teams are looking at high school kids or kids in college and trying to project them. I don't know about you, but when I was 15, I'm glad nobody tried to project me in anything when I was 15.
Yeah.
Because that's.
Yeah, I would think it's the tough conversations with the families, right? That's why I sort of tried to ask Greg about a little bit, the process of what can you take from watching the big league baseball game and sort of trying to translate it and having a tough conversation and just basically telling a person one way or the other, right, the opportunities and how hard it would be one way or the other, and not trying to squash a dream as quickly as possible, because that's the toughest thing, right? At
that age, everything's a dream.
Well, a kid being an athletic person is sort of where you start, right? I'm not sure that Greg or anybody else can teach a kid how to be athletic. I think that's what Greg's point is.
Yes.
He can teach him all the other things.
Right.
He can't teach him how to be an athlete. Like, you are either that or you're not. So I think that's sort of one going to, and that's a great question you ask about how big Canada is and trying to go to all the different parts and not missing that person.
Yeah.
Right, is sort of the hardest thing for Greg and what they do as an organization, and just going as to many places and getting as many athletes as you possibly can to buy into baseball. I think that's the easiest place to start. So good for Greg. I've talked to Greg many times about all this, and it's not the easiest thing. But just listening to Greg and how his demeanor is and how the conversation back and forth between young people and the families, and how families are with young people. If you ever went to a baseball game with 14 and 15-year-olds and listened to parents, and just to see Greg, and I have.
Yeah.
That's the point, right? It's and just that conversation can't be the easiest thing. So good for Greg.
Because everybody's son is a superstar.
All is the next A-Rod, and there's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they should be. I mean, my family was the same way, but it's. Again, we just appreciate somebody like Greg will take out the time and try and turn baseball into something in Canada. And it just seems like the right person for the right job is Greg Hamilton. So good for him.
Yeah, and again, the draft will be a lot of fun. There's some
and there's a lot of names.
There's some and there's some guy. There's the Lawson kid. Some projections have him going to the Blue Jays around 60. Projecting what teams are going to do with the 60th pick. I know that there's a lot of they're the 59th pick. I'm sorry, or whatever, 59th, 56, whatever is 59th pick. But I mean, you've got to have a lot of you've got to have a lot of inside knowledge about an organization to do a baseball draft.
You got to be good with your player development.
Yeah,
that's what you got to be good at.
And we'll just leave it at that.
That's what you.
Andrew Baggarly covers the Giants for The Athletic. He's done it for 2 decades, and he's lived to talk about it. talk a little Willie Mays, take a look at the Giants. Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet. All right, welcome back to Blair and Barker. Now, seriously, I was just telling Barker there's a show on Netflix about sprinters, and it's kind of like the Drive to Survive, the behind the scenes look at F1 and all that. It's very good.
I just wonder how I went from talking about the Minions, going to the Minions movie with my son, and then you start talking about sprinting and.
No, well, it was talking about stuff that we're watching. You're going to see Despicable Me 4.
I'm not going. I'm going to a cookout with my family.
Oh, okay.
We're going to watch the soccer tonight.
But your son's going to...
And my son's going to watch...
But we were talking about how much we enjoy Despicable Me.
I do. I love it.
And then I mentioned the Netflix.
Not afraid to say it.
There we go.
I'm a big fan.
We've got tickets to give away to see the Jays and Tigers. We'll do that later on in the show. And I just lost the trivia question, so we'll be doing it a little later in the show. Right. Thank you, Mr. Barker. Let's bring in our guest. He's Andrew Baggarly, Giants reporter with The Athletic. Mr. Baggarly, thanks so much for joining us on Blair and Barker today. And I'm sorry you had to put up with that patter. But
no problem. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm still here. You are too. Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah, how about that?
This
business will chew you up and spit you out. We've found a hidey hole that we can avoid the Reaper here and made a career out of this.
It's
crazy
amazing.
Job, huh?
It's amazing. We're still fooling. If only they knew. Anyhow, sorry. Well, Parker's giving me this look. Hey, yeah, we were talking about Willie Mays off air as well, and Barker was making the point about yesterday's celebration of Willie Mays' life. The Bill Clinton story. First of all, when you get an ex-president showing up, that's a pretty big deal. When you get another ex-president sending best wishes along a video, that's a big deal too. But Clinton's story about golfing with Willie Mays and seeing Willie Mays using these ratty old clubs held, with tape on the handles, and he's saying, "I'm the president of the United States. I can get better clubs for you." And Willie basically going, "Nah, I'm good. I mean, I know what these are going to do for me anyhow." It was just, there's so many. There's so many good stories about Willie Mays, aren't there?
I mean, what's amazing to me is I'm reflecting on that, too. I mean, that was one of several stories. And by the way, I can officially now say that Bill Clinton made me late for Willie Mays' funeral. I'll tell you that story in a minute if you want to hear it. But,
sure, I will.
Absolutely.
You'll always hear all the stuff, growing up about, to achieve, you got to have high goals and, better is best and all that stuff and don't settle for anything less. And the thing about Willie Mays that was just remarkable is he didn't perform or play. He did it to compete, and he did it because he loved it. He didn't care if people thought he was the greatest player. We've gone through just a ton of Willie Mays' old interviews and memories throughout the past few weeks. And one interview he gave was, he was asked point blank, "Are you the greatest player who's ever lived?" And he said, "That's not my job. That's not my job to figure out. That's not what drove me to play. I didn't want to be considered the best." You hear that? I want to be the best. I want to be considered the best ever. He didn't care. That's not what drove him. What drove him was to be the best that he could be, which was awfully, awfully, awfully good. And that's just remarkable. It's like hitting that perfect sweet spot of never settling for anything but your best, but not really judging your best based on other people's best. Just being satisfied that you've done the best that you could do. And gosh, I mean, there's so many great examples from his life, and John Shea's book captures so many of them, the 24, the life lessons of Willie Mays. So a really good reading if you happen to pick that one up.
Yeah. And, we had Bob Kendrick on the day after Willie Mays passed away. And we were talking about Willie and I'd kind of, how you kind of blank out on things. I'd forgotten about the gap in Willie's early days because of his military service. And I went back and looked at that. And as Bob Kendrick said, figure out what he could have done in those 2 years, and the numbers would have been even more remarkable because he came back from military service and he was a star. And if you take those 18 months or year and a half or whatever it was and add that to his career, He could have been the home run king. He really could have.
Oh, and then you add in the fact that his home games were all at the Polo Grounds in Candlestick Park. I mean, he could have easily hit 800 home runs if he were a Yankee. I mean, that's the amazing thing is you don't think of Willie Mays home run hitter. You think about his all-around game. Home runs were just one thing he did, and he didn't even try to hit them as much as he could have. He said many times, if I tried to hit home runs, I could have hit more. But, I knew that wasn't the best way to help my team win in some instances. Or wasn't the highest percentage player, whatever. And that's one thing that's been, I think, really awesome as we've gotten all these retrospectives about him is just for people to appreciate, not only his talent, but his intelligence, his focus, his determination, just how shrewd a player he was. And that goes to just how he lived his life. I mean, so many aspects of American society changed because of him, and because he made fans of people who could recognize similarities in what otherwise would seem to be different types of people. So, and Barack Obama touched on that in his recorded message. That someone like Willie Mays doing what he did allowed someone like Barack Obama to believe that he could run for president someday. And he was. It wasn't all roses for him in San Francisco. He was booed here early. When he tried to buy a house, he was redlined out of certain areas. He had a rock thrown through his window. I mean, he was, he was a pioneer in many, many ways. And he was, when baseball was the national game and he was the star player on both coasts, he really did a lot, I think, to help, see people, help people see similarities in each other where maybe otherwise they wouldn't have. And, that just makes him a huge figure in North American history, as well as, baseball history.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see who the next Willie Mays is, too. I think that's the sort of the going story is who is the next Willie Mays. And I think that'll only play out. But I want to hear your Clinton story. Why did Clinton make you late?
Oh, so I was running around yesterday. I had to run a couple errands. I'm taking off for the All-Star break a little bit early because I got a trip planned and just trying to get loose ends picked up. And things took longer than I thought. And I had the Google Maps up, and it said I was going to get to the parking garage outside the ballpark like 5 minutes before the ceremony started. And I'm running late. And I'm just trying to get there. And I finally get to the press gate, and I got 4 minutes to spare. And I barely made it. And then they say, Hope, we can't let anybody in. Secret Service told us we can't let anybody in. You got to wait here. So I had to wait 20 minutes, and a bunch of SUVs finally roll in. And I thought, is it Obama? Is it Kamala Harris? Who is it? And it turns out it was President Clinton. So, and he walked in literally just as the ceremony was starting. And then, because I had to wait out there, I walked in 15 minutes after it started. But yeah, it was. I think it was worth it for the story, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a similar incident at the All-Star game in Texas. I covered it one year. Same, for some reason, we were running. I know we were running late. It was just so damn hot that nobody wanted to leave the hotel. Then, the media shuttle gets there. We go through security, and President Bush Sr. is there. And so he's going through. And so there's this kind of backlog of people. I'll never forget. Barbara Bush says, these gentlemen are working. Let them through onto the elevator, and then we'll. So I was like one of the most amazing. So they literally pushed us in. We got in the elevator. I've always remembered that story. These gentlemen are working. We'll wait.
Yeah.
It was.
It's
amazing.
It's funny. You talk to people who ask us about what we do and think that we're starstruck talking to players all the time, and that's not because we're around them every day. But you have those moments where you run into other famous people, and those are the kind of the starstruck moments you have. Like I'll never forget. It's like 1996, 97 or something, and I'm covering an Angel game and. The elevator is about to close. I stick my arm in, it opens up, and there's Gene Autry standing there in the elevator. And I said, oh, gosh, I'm sorry to make you wait there, Mr. Autry. And he just stuck out his hand and said, how the hell are you? So, the people you meet, that are not in baseball doing this job that always gives you a little bit of a thrill.
Andrew, every time we face a different team with the Blue Jays, we're always digging into numbers, and we start digging into the Giants numbers, and you see 14th in runs, 15th in average, 20th in homers, last in home runs at home. Now, that's not surprising because of that park and how big it is and the way the wind blows. And then you look at their record, and they're only, 3 games under 500. How are they only 3 games under 500 with, now I'm going to say this nicely, Matt Chapman being their best offensive player?
Well, I tell you what, since May, it's been Elliot Ramos has been their best offensive player. He's basically done what Chapman's done with a month less of playing time, and that's why he's an all-star, and he's just been phenomenal. But you know what? The most amazing part really is that they aren't completely buried in the standings when they've basically gone most of the last month with 1 or even 1.5 starting pitchers, depending on how you look at Jordan Hicks, who's a reliever, who's already coming up against, his high for innings in a season. I mean, they had almost everybody go down. Blake Snell has been a complete disaster. They think they're finally getting back to Blake Snell that they signed when he starts today. We'll see about that. But really, they've had to piece it together with bullpen games, with bulk pitchers, with guys, making their major league debuts. They've been just having to puzzle through just how to get 9 innings every day. And so the fact that they've been able to, get close to coming out to the other side of that, and they're going to, get Snell back. Robbie Ray is coming back close after the All-Star break. He's looked fantastic in his rehab from Tommy John. He's at the end stage of that. They really feel like they're positioned probably as good as anybody to have a good second half. And if there aren't going to be a whole lot of difference makers available at the trade deadline, they might have more coming onto their roster than any other team might. But you're right. It's been kind of similar to probably the season you guys have been watching in Toronto. It's just, it hasn't been a super inspiring team. There have been some good stories, some good individual performances, but just no real sustained momentum. There have been no big winning streaks. Now they're coming off a road trip where they played really well. They were real close to winning 3 straight series against Cleveland, Atlanta, and the Dodgers, all really good teams. So they're feeling, I think, probably about as good about themselves as they have all year. And I'll tell you what, I know that Matt Chapman was hurt last year. I think he was leading the American League in doubles at the All-Star break, and then obviously had a bad second half. He had that thumb. He's a winning player. I mean, he's just a really, really good player. If you want him to be your number 1 offensive player and your cleanup hitter, you're going to be disappointed. But if you want somebody who's just going to make good baseball decisions, from one moment to the next moment to the next moment, I mean, he's about as good as I've ever seen. And defensively at third base, when you got Logan Webb, who gets a ton of ground balls, when Alex Cobb comes back, he gets a ton of ground balls. I mean, he's been so stabilizing on that infield. And frankly, he still is generating a lot of WAR. And the offensive numbers don't leap off the page, but I am surprised that he didn't have more action in free agency, because he's somebody who just does a lot to help the team win day after day.
Now, as you point out in your article in The Athletic, to talk about how, Farhan Zaidi likes to start a season with veterans, depth in the position player side, and then once that depth has served its purpose, move on from it. And we've seen that this year. We've seen it in other seasons. What is the next step for the Giants, particularly as we get close to the deadline? Let's presume that Blake Snell is okay, is manageable, that there isn't a crisis around him, and you've got Robbie Ray coming back. What is their big need, and how do you think Farhan might go out and address it, or will he address it?
Well, I don't know if he will. And now there has been some talk as, will they buy, will they sell? I just think it's really myopic to think that this team could possibly sell. Mm-hmm. Even if they have a really, really bad remainder of July, they already had to punt 2 draft picks to sign Snell and Chapman. Their second and third round picks. I mean, that's over a quarter of their bonus pool that they punted. They're into the luxury tax. Now, if it's hopeless, you say, well, you trade somebody, trade some salary, maybe you could dip under that tax. And sure, that's a possibility. But I just think they're too pot committed this season. And they have a baseball executive, Farhan Zaidi, who just signed an extension, but the Giants have had one, successful season out of 6. And, there's going to be some hard questions that are going to be asked after the season if they finish under 500 or even if they don't make the playoffs. So you have a chief executive that should be motivated out of self-interest to try to make the playoffs. So I don't think this team is going to look to sell or even do a mix of buying and selling. I think they're going to look to add. There's just not a whole lot that I think is going to be out there. And a lot of it's going to have to be internal. And really that's going to be the referendum on his front office is, have they created enough value within their system that they have the solutions in-house that can sort of put them over the top to get just into the wild card field? And then, you think, well, if you do have Ray, Snell, Webb all pitching well, then you are a pretty formidable playoff opponent no matter who you're facing with that kind of starting pitching. So that's sort of the blueprint. That's how they're thinking about it. I just don't know if there's going to be any big difference makers. One position is shortstop, and Nick Ahmed, I think, has been pretty serviceable defensively, which is, as we said, valuable for a ground ball staff. He really doesn't add much on the offensive side apart from, taking those lunging swings and blooping singles. So, that's an area where they could possibly try to improve, but, there's just not a whole lot of shortstops out there that are going to be moved to the deadline. So I think a lot of it's going to be just how good this group is.
So we know they kicked the tires on Correa, a little more than kicked tires on Ohtani. We know about Aaron Judge. My obvious question, are they going to be players for Juan Soto in the offseason?
Yeah, they did more than kick the tires on Correa. They basically, signed. Yeah. They signed the lease agreement and everything, and then they gave the tire a last kick, and the rear spoiler fell off. So,
that's true.
That's going to be interesting. The Twins follow the Blue Jays in to San Francisco on this final homestand before the break, and that's going to be Carlos Correa's first visit to San Francisco since the unpleasantness of a couple off seasons ago. But you're right. This is a team, and you're there. You're paying respect to Willie Mays. Buster Posey's being introduced. He gets a huge ovation. This is a team that has had some of the game's greatest star players. Barry Bonds, Willie Mays. Orlando Cepeda, who they just lost as well. Some of the game's real greats, and Will Clark, still beloved in San Francisco. That's really, I think, what needs to happen to really engage this fan base again, is to have that star type player. Now, I don't know if it's going to be Juan Soto because, as you mentioned, this is not a great environment to hit in, and that's a huge consideration for a lot of hitters. I think that's why, they probably would have had to give Bryce Harper $400 million to have him sign when they pursued him, finished runners up to him. That's probably one of the reasons Aaron Judge, wasn't convinced to sort of give up what he had in New York and sign. I mean, that's been really the only major free agent, major difference making free agent that they've signed, in the last, quarter century has been, Barry Bonds in 1993. So, I just don't think that's the way that they can think about building their roster. Now, will they be interested in Soto? I think he's a Boris client. You probably have, if you have the biggest offer, you're going to get the guy. I think that's usually the case with Boris clients. So, yeah, the Giants could totally blow everybody out of the water. And he's super, super young as well. But we'll see who's even calling the shots after this season. There's a whole lot that still has to be figured out before we get to that point. And if the Yankees are motivated to keep Soto, it's really hard to take a free agent away from the New York Yankees when they want a guy. They usually get him. I can only think of a couple instances where they didn't, like Yamamoto maybe being one of them. So, I don't know if I would handicap the Giants as being, one of the teams I would say would be a favorite for Soto, but they'll listen, they'll be interested, and if they think that they can get any kind of hometown or deal out of him, they'll sign him. They wouldn't have signed Chapman, they wouldn't have signed Snell, they wouldn't have made those deals if they weren't, market friendly contracts. And basically it took until free agency spring training to get them to agree to come down and give them a below market contract. So I just have a hard time seeing Scott Boras getting there with Juan Soto. I think he's going to have too many teams that are interested, and there's going to be generational, life-changing money there, franchise-altering money from at least one team, and I just don't know if the Giants are going to be that team.
Andrew, it sounds like you're saying that the organization is a run-preventing organization. I just wonder how hard it is to win a division trying to do that. The Blue Jays, the only reason I say that, the Blue Jays have been trying to do that for the last couple of years. It works, I think, getting into the playoffs because of the 3 wild cards. Do you think that's where the Giants organization is when it comes to development at the lower levels, right? It's not so much of the offensive side as it is defensive side, baseball IQ, base running, and run preventing with the dude that's standing on the mound. Am I onto something there?
Yeah, I think that was really the way they thought about it in their World Series years too. They were building around Lincecum and Kane, and they had Jonathan Sanchez early on, and then obviously Barry Zito was a free agent, but and then they had the bullpen that just matched up with anybody, and they're going to honor those guys, the core four they call them, Afel, Casilla, Romo, and Javier Lopez, putting them on the Wall of Fame here coming up this weekend, and they were a part of all three World Series teams, so it very much was, I think, a pitching forward plan that the Giants won with. And, you're right. You don't have to necessarily win the division. I mean, the Giants won the division, they just snuck in 2010, and then they won the division in 12, but they were a wild card in 14. And we've seen that, wild cards can win pennants very, very, maybe not easily, but frequently. So, I do think that this is an organization based on their ballpark, and they have moved in the fences. They have tried to make some alterations, putting the bullpens in the outfield now, to make the park play a little more fair. But the average game time temperature is still the lowest in baseball. I mean, if you've been a tourist here in San Francisco in the summertime, you probably bought a sweatshirt here that
yes.
when you were unprepared. So it's never going to be a place where the weather's warming up. Now the ball's going to start flying. Not in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So you got to be at peace with that, and you got to realize how you build a team to win. And I think the Giants have had some good teams where they've slugged it a little bit. 2002, a good example of that. But if they don't pitch well, I just don't think they can win. And that's true for most teams. I think it's especially true for them.
Yeah.
Andrew, really good of you to join us, man. Great to hear your voice again. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Andrew.
Be well.
Yeah, of course. All right. We'll see you guys maybe next season, hopefully.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
See ya.
Be well. Andrew Baggarly covers the Giants for The Athletic. Yeah, he spent 20 years covering the Giants.
Listen, no offense, but there's if I have other options, there's no way.
I mean,
if I'm an everyday player, I'm going to say now the crowd's there when they're good.
Oh, the crowds!
It's off the charts. The park is beautiful, but as soon as you step out of the dugout, man, and you see which way the wind's blowing. And how cold it is. Forget that. No chance.
The setting is spectacular.
Unless you're ponying up, boy.
I went to, my wife and myself, went to a game at Candlestick. She came, I was covering the Expos. It was a Canada Day game, but we were playing in San Francisco, so she came along on the trip, and we were going to sit in the stands. This is a Candlestick Park. This is the 1st of July, a night game.
Yeah.
No lie. They were renting blankets.
Yeah.
They were renting, and I mean those big, not like beach towel. I'm talking blankets.
Yeah.
Like heavy wool blankets. And you needed them.
Dudes wearing turtlenecks in July. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, guys getting blown off the mound. Stories about guys getting blown off the mound.
Crazy. Yeah.
Do you remember the old did you play in Candlestick? No, you would not have played in Candlestick.
No, not the old one. I played in the new stadium. The new stadium's beautiful. Oracle Park's beautiful.
The bullpens were down in foul territory down the lines, and the players had their own the relievers had their own little dugout down there. And, I mean, you would see guys go out there, and it would just be so cold.
Yeah.
So cold.
There's no chance Judge was going to go there. No chance.
I mean, I think what happens, is...
get one team feeding off the other.
I think what happens is, a lot of those guys come from around there, from that area. Like for Chapman, that was kind of, he's like a Fullerton guy or something like that. I think there's a little bit of that.
I think Chapman was running out of options. And I think the outside of the park, too, with the problems that they've been having there, I don't think that's been, the Buster Posies even came out and said,
he was very
basically,
clear.
You got to be careful. Like, that's basically what he said.
And that is...
That's never a good thing coming from a former superstar of your organization saying that when you're trying to recruit players.
It is a hard sell.
Got to overpay.
I mean, I haven't been there. I haven't been in downtown San Francisco. The last time I was there, I spent all my time in Berkeley, which was nice, but it's a completely different city than San Francisco. But I mean, it's one of those things, because I know people always say, well, these guys are getting so much money. Why would that matter? And the thing you got to understand is, it's like the passport thing. It used to drive people nuts whenever players would say, well, you got to go through customs. But here's the thing. if you're getting this much money here and you're getting the same amount of money here, and here it's going to be easier for you to get home than it is here.
Something less for me to have to worry about.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a fact.
But we're all like that.
It's a fact.
If I can take this, if this gets me home faster than this and it's less hassle, guess what I'm going to do?
That's right.
So those things, and because the money is generally equivalent, that leaves you in a position where you have to do what, and I keep talking about this, Russell Martin, Captain Canada. And I do not hold this against him.
Good for him.
You know, Russ is a great Canadian. He loved his time in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's from Montreal, all that stuff. He also got a year and more money to come to Toronto than anybody else. And he'll tell you that split the difference. You know, it didn't split, that made the difference.
Mm-hmm.
JP Richard used to talk about having to pay a Canadian premium. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you more to get this guy up here.
Yeah, I think it more has to do with the park and the wind and how cold it is consistently than it does probably the outskirts of the park. And
oh, yeah. Well,
I think because of how much money they make, they could control that. They
take
could,
an Uber.
Well, I mean,
or
it's not an Uber.
No, but you got a driver. You got a driver. You could
get around it. The rich parts that they could live in.
Well, and it's also, you come out from the underground garage and away you go. I mean,
it's not figure out ways around that. I just don't know.
It's not like you're walking down the street and jumping on the cable car.
Like I'm sure if Matt Chapman had other choices because of the way he don't like the elevated fastball, that ain't the right park to go to.
But he liked if you talked to him about playing in Oakland.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, he liked the area.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
He liked the area.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think guys do like that area. If you're California, I guess
that doesn't hurt, but
there's a West Coast, East Coast thing. I still think California guys.
It is a beautiful
are more
park.
inclined to go to California.
It's beautiful, but man, I used to lay because the big thing was hit it in the bay. Yeah. That was the thing, right? Jeff, I used to back leg balls like there ain't no tomorrow. It was like wall scraping. It's like it was the worst.
Oh, that's why
it was the worst. And what Barry one-handed?
That's what I was about to say.
Like 100 feet into the water, man. It is now. You say what you want about Barry,
I don't.
But he's one-handing it.
Yeah, no, he
fooled.
Whatever
out in front.
Whatever he was on was working better than whatever everybody else was on.
300 feet distance. Man,
it was true.
Everything I had, Jeff. Every ounce of energy that I could muster. Wall scraping.
A little bit of news. Tyler Glasnow has been placed on the IL by the Dodgers, so Hunter Green is going to the All-Star game in his place. That was just announced like a little while ago.
Yeah, is that shocking?
Tyler Glasnow on the IL?
No, he's a big man who throws a bazillion.
No, it's not. It's not shocking at all.
It's not if, it's when.
The Giants will be well represented, though, even without him there.
The Dodgers, you mean?
Or the Dodgers will be well represented, even without him there.
The Dodgers in trouble, though.
Listen, you know what I said about the Dodgers from jump. I don't think they're the best team in the National League. They may not be the second best team in the National League.
The Phillies can mess around and still be the best team. They can mess around. Like, they got it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can manufacture a run. How dare I say that with what they got in that lineup? But they can do that if they have to.
I want to talk about the Phillies a little bit when you come back and this question about who gets to start the All-Star game for the National League.
You know who it is? It's the dude that pitches for Pittsburgh.
Oh, that can't be. You know what?
Absolutely.
It can't be. We're going to no. It cannot be. We're going to talk about that when we come back. It can't be. We're going to talk about that when we come back. I got Jay's tickets to give away, and Kevin Barker's going to tell you. Blake Snell does. There's one of two things that happens when you face Blake Snell, right?
Yeah, he punches everybody out or he walks the house.
So how do the Blue Jays approach this?
I'm sure they're going to overthink it.
I'm sure
that's what it's going to happen.
15 people in their hotel room right now.
Well, they're watching video because Andrew said they learned Andrew say that how good he was at the minor league level on rehab.
They got 15 people going. Anyhow, we'll talk about that and give away tickets when we come back. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. Such a jerk. It's Blair and Barker. This is Tuesday. It's been a delightfully wine-free Tuesday because the Jays didn't play last night. So
Give it about 3 hours, Jeff.
other than Barker's cheap shot at the player development department, it's been a pretty good show. It's been a pretty positive.
I mean,
show.
let's be honest. You know, Kevin could probably suit up tomorrow and be top 10 prospect for the.
9:45 is the first. 9:45 is the first.
What?
9:45 is the first pitch tonight. You say Kikuchi against Blake Snell.
Oh boy.
We've been giving you the chance to win Blue Jays tickets all season long here in Blair and Barker. All you have to do is text the correct answer to
Ryan Goins was the person that got hurt on.
That's why
Canada
I said.
Day.
I told you that yesterday. Thank you for listening.
Well,
all you have to do is text the correct answer to our daily baseball trivia question to 590-590. Our last question and answer was: this outfielder originally came over to the Blue Jays in a trade from the Astros and was later traded to the Tigers for second baseman. His last appearance in MLB was in 2022 when he appeared as a pitcher for the Cleveland Guardians. The answer was Anthony Gose. I got it, by the way. Today's question is to win tickets. Today's question is to win tickets to see the Jays and Tigers at the Rogers Center on Saturday, July 20th.
We'll never get this.
I got this one right away. Who was the winning? I did. I was there. Who was the winning pitcher? Actually, I wasn't, but I got it. Who was the winning pitcher for the Tigers on the final day of the 1987 season when they eliminated the Jays? This makes sense if you think about it. Who was the winning pitcher for the Tigers on the final day of the 1987 season when they eliminated the Jays? You can text the answer to 590-590 for your shot to win.
I was 12.
See rules at sportsnet.ca/590.
I was 12.
What?
I was 12.
In 1987?
Yeah. Could promise you that question. I was thinking about zero of those teams when I was 12.
I'm scared to think about what 12-year-old Kevin Parker was thinking about. I have a pretty good idea, but
it hasn't changed much.
Getting it down and getting it down.
How about that? I was born that way, Jeff.
You're playing Little League then, right? You must have been crushing.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me. They would. I think they let me play T-ball for like a half a game. So we can't have this anymore. Talk about that athlete thing.
Was baseball the first sport you played, or did you play something before?
I played 4 other sports
and you ran,
just so I could be the best.
Right?
Yeah, track, cross country, football, basketball, baseball. But I did all them other 4 things just to mess around so I was elite at baseball. That's it. Just messing around, Jeff. Okay.
Were you your high school's homecoming?
Fact.
Were you the homecoming king too?
Probably.
Because that was
I
the
don't
thing.
remember
you
that,
can't remember if you were homecoming
yeah,
king.
I probably was. Yeah, no. Yeah, I was Bo Bichette. Yeah.
I just wanted to know. I thought maybe you were like big man on camp.
Yeah. I went to 3 different high schools.
Oh,
because my dad was trying to maneuver me around so I'd get the biggest scholarship to go. I want to be a Hokie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I, go on because I went to John Battle. No, nobody paid attention to that place, so I had to go to a different school. And then I didn't like it there. The coach was a knob, and it just, he's trying to, typical, like overthinking it. We've never had this before. What do we do with it?
Was he a khaki?
Oh, yeah, I think he was an advanced one. Like he was ahead of his time.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah. And then I stayed that. And then I went to another place, and then that
Virginia High was where you took off, right?
He just got out of my way, let me pitch, and I got a full ride to pitch and never pitched as a Hokie.
That's pretty good because full ride baseball scholarship back then was a big deal because a lot of schools gave out half, right? Half scholarship.
To pitch. Never pitched. He saw me going back leg city, boy, and he said, center field, third. And then he gave me the bunt one time, and I didn't get it down, and he benched me for a game. That's the only thing I remember about college.
So it wasn't like you weren't like Spencer Horwitz. They didn't want you to play third, first, left.
No, versatility was no thing then. No.
They didn't want that because just
then I got
in case
drafted by the Brewers, and they wanted me to gain weight and play first. And,
Oh.
Yeah, look at me now, sitting here with you. What's happened?
Could be worse.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about the.
Could it be?
Yeah. Because you're in this camp. I wrote a little blurb on Sportsnet.ca about
How
this.
was it? Was it any good, or are you just trying to get people fired up?
No, it was terrific as usual.
Oh.
And it was full of good stuff.
Who was your choice?
It's got to be one of the Phillies dudes. I mean, you got 3. Pick one. Ranger Suarez.
Yeah,
Paul
would
Skeens
Suarez care?
Paul
Let me ask you that.
Can't, here's the thing. Paul Skeens can't start an all-star game if he's got less than 70 innings pitched in half a year.
Who cares? He's like 5-0 and nobody can hit him.
It doesn't. It's not. Kevin.
Yeah,
it's not in Pittsburgh. It's not his hometown.
Who cares?
I do. It's not his hometown.
Who cares?
It's absolutely
top
dumb.
of the order against the American League. Those 3 guys that you're going to face, absolutely. I want to watch 105 being thrown at the best 3 hitters in the American League. That's what I want to see.
I will say this.
That's what I want to see.
Will say,
here it is. See if you can hit it.
I will say
I'm going to see that from the Phillies guys are going to be adding and subtracting, and they're going to be out there pitching. And no, we don't want to see that as baseball fans.
I think you're insane.
I want to be energetic. Who's going to watch that game anyway?
Well,
nobody
All-Star
watches
game
that game. No,
the
they
All-Star
don't.
Game is good
They
ratings.
watch the home run derby and the prospects game. Nobody watches.
Nobody watches the
watches
the
I
prospects
do. I'm going to watch
That's
that.
The problem. Nobody watches the prospects game.
I
We've
will
talked
watch
about
that. But the actual All-Star game, come on.
People watch
because they talk too much during the game. I don't like that.
People watch the All-Star.
That's why I want to see Skeens throwing a bazillion by people.
Well, I was going to say this.
Throwing that pitch that's got a new name that nobody's ever heard of.
It's whatever.
Yeah, Skeeter or whatever it's called.
If you think about the great All-Star moments, I will say this: if you think about the great recent All-Star moments, it's Pedro's. Remember when Pedro?
Such an old writer.
Pedro struck out in order. He struck out Larkin, Walker, Sosa, and then he started out the next inning by striking out McGuire. And I'm saying that was in Boston. That was a big deal. And then you think about Randy Johnson. Remember with John Kruk and Larry Walker? Walker put his helmet around and Kruk bailed on it. So, yeah, I mean, there is that point to be made. It is entertainment, and it would be a lot of fun. But
you have a reason why you're the fun police, is basically why you wrote the article.
No, I just don't. I don't think he deserves it.
Oh, man, alive. Like it.
There's still something.
Come on. He's an all-star.
There's still something.
He's doing something that we've never seen before.
Yes, we have.
We've never seen that stuff before.
No, but we've seen. But we've
say
seen,
you're sorry.
But
then.
we've seen guys. We've seen guys strike out a ton of guys.
Not like that. Like that.
Silly.
It's free and easy and nobody can hear it.
You don't even believe what you're saying.
I do believe it.
You don't believe what you're saying.
I just want to see him do it in the first inning, and you can bring in whoever you want to bring in. It's like the top of the order that gets the American League against Paul Skeens.
Yeah,
nobody cares.
You don't even agree with what you don't believe what you're saying. You just don't. I know you don't. I know how you think.
You're
do
believe
there saying,
it.
I'm going to piss Blair off by saying this. You do not believe it.
Because I read half the article, and I was like, yeah.
Paul Skeens can't start.
Yeah,
that would be just sacrilege.
That is such a old man get off my lawn article that it is. Not he don't deserve it. Really?
Doesn't deserve it. Dude, he hasn't pitched. He's not going to have 70 innings.
Oh, bad.
He may not have as many innings as Trevor Richards, for God's sake.
It's the quality of the innings that he's pitched.
Anyhow,
that's the reason why. It's because I'm right and you're wrong.
No, I was going to say.
Period. End of story.
It
ain't going to happen because they're going to give it to some old fogey who's going to add and subtract and walk off the field like he's got broken legs. He's been around since you started writing, and that's no fun. I want fun. Give me a reason to tune into the first inning of an All-Star game.
So. It's Yusei Kikuchi against Blake Snell
That's
tonight.
a reason.
And as you mentioned, Blake Snell does two things. He either walks people or he strikes them out.
Andrew seems to think he's now the best left-handed pitcher in baseball.
No, he said his rehab was going. So what should the Jays' approach be against Blake Snell?
I mean, his fastball and his changeup get hammered. That's his best 2 pitches. Why wouldn't I look right down the middle? Why would I not simplify it so much because of what you just said? The stats. He hasn't pitched since June 2nd. There's a reason that you look right down the middle. And he's walking 5.32 walks per 9, and he's got almost 12 strikeouts per 9. Like, he strikes out everybody, walks everybody. Why wouldn't I look right? So he's basically, I guess, effectively wild. I mean, his ERA's pushing 10. Like, basically don't locate ever. So why would I hit a pitcher's pitch if I never have to?
What do you
That's
think,
the point.
What do you
Look
think
right down the middle.
What do you think the chances are of
Slim.
them doing that?
It's very slim. And then you're going into that park tonight it'll be frigid.
Oh, it's
not
going to be that.
It'll be frigid. Wind gusting like 100 miles an hour to one side of the field. So now everybody that's right-handed is going to be trying to hit it where it ain't blowing. So there's my theory out the window. And, luckily Springer's leading off. He'll set the tone.
The weather in San Francisco.
Wind.
Ooh. 19.
Cold, frigid, I told you.
It'll be 15 tonight.
Yeah, I told you, frigid. They'll be wearing long sleeves, turtlenecks, those winter gloves, batting gloves that we get. Yeah, I used to get them. I had to buy them because I was a minor leaguer.
The wind is 27 kilometers an hour.
I told you, every day, all day there. And then
13 at night.
Batting practices are the worst thing you can do in San Francisco. You want to know why? It's because you lay into one that you think, boy, that is 17 rows up. And somebody is camped under that thing. It's a can of corn. And now the first thing you tell yourself is, I can't swing at that and I can't hit it there. So what happens to you? You're either chasing or you take cookies. So it's not mentally that park is tough. It's very tough on you. I was one of the best 5 o'clock hitters in baseball, Jeff. Just my 5 o'clocks were something to watch. And me wall scraping balls is not the easiest thing to do. So hopefully they, you say is good. Hopefully he's commanding. I mean, he's, the home run ball has been eating him up a little bit. 9 home runs his last 8 starts. His ERA's 6.5 in those 8 starts. Like command of the fastball and spin on the secondary stuff. I know he's tried to combat that, throwing some more split change-ups or whatever that thing he's trying to throw. Hopefully he can have the velocity on the fastball and don't throw it down the middle. If he don't throw the fastball and the secondary stuff down the middle because of how hard he throws and how much you have to open up the front side and cheat, internally, that internal clock with a lefty that throws that hard, things that you tell yourself mechanically that you have to get started a little bit sooner. If he just don't throw it down the middle, I think he'll be okay enough. And hopefully the lineup, the top of the order for the Jays, does some things and put a little pressure on some defenses and win 2 out of 3.
It'll be Bassett against Logan Webb tomorrow, and then Jordan Hicks taking on Kevin Gausman on Thursday afternoon. Jordan Hicks now starting for the San Francisco Giants. Of course, he was with the Jays last year. And
not throwing as hard too, right?
No, he's not. He's Jeff Passan did an article on some of the sort of the really effective pitches in baseball this year. Now, this is much earlier, but Hicks's numbers were amazing. He's not throwing as hard.
Yeah, I don't think they're as amazing now because, when you don't throw as hard, you got to locate a little bit more. Yeah. You got to be a little bit more unpredictable. I don't think his secondary stuff,
again, for
quality
people,
of the strikes.
For people who don't know, he made clear to the Jays that he wanted to start, and Jay said that's
well, it's more money in starting. It's more money. It's easier for him to get more suitors.
And that was his
worked.
And it worked.
Can't argue that. I mean, he's in the right park, I think, to try and learn how to start again, which is pretty cool, the run prevent.
Actually, he's in the right division when you think about the start again.
I think so, too.
They've got good teams, but those are certainly not home run friendly parks. That's a pretty good division to make.
I think the right pitching coach.
Yeah.
He's got sort of seems like when you watch his starts, I watched a couple of his videos, looks like his demeanor's good around the mound. Just the way he takes the sign, the way, the pace of. I think that the pitch clock is a big deal for him too. Sort of gets him not overthinking it.
You always got the sense with Jordan Hicks as a reliever that he was on the edge of disaster all the time.
I think that was good. Where the inning he was in, how hard he was throwing, how much the ball moved when he threw it. I just don't know. I don't think they could figure out the inning to throw him in. Right. I think that was it. Right? Is he good in the 6th or the 9th? Yeah. Or everywhere in between? Like every time I talked to Petey, it was like pulling their hair out, trying to figure out, do we waste him in the 6th or do we keep him till the 9th? It's like
the stuff is great, but
you have no idea. Because there's a lot of unknown, right? Just he didn't throw enough strikes. The secondary stuff a lot of the times was non-competitive. That sort of eliminated how hard he threw. So
Matt Chapman, 82 hits, 12 home runs, 42 RBI, 39 bases, 142 total bases.
Yeah, that's about right.
His last 15 games is hitting .333, the 1.079 OPS. Those numbers I gave you would rank second on the Blue Jays.
Yeah, you'd be hitting cleanup.
Behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Just going to ask the question. And again, he's ranks 8th among NL players with 3.5 WAR. Now, of course, a ton of that is defensive WAR.
He's a very good defender. He wasn't at the tail end of his Jays career.
Should the Jays have made a better attempt to bring him back here?
You know, who his agent is.
Yeah, but we talked about this at the time, and I said I didn't really care because fool me once, fool me twice. I thought that there was going to be somebody else.
You know, the problem is it's like the Bo thing that you talk about, which is a great point. They have a starting point with Bo. Where would you start with Chapman? Like, I just don't know what defense is worth. I know, obviously the WAR, and you can sort of add up, what a one WAR's worth and what you would want to give him for a year. But, I mean, he's got obvious holes. We've seen those. I mean, the way he plays defense, though, I mean, he sort of helps. It would be okay. Even if he was a Jay, now it'd be okay to have the left fielder you want to have, the second baseman you want to have, with the left side of the infield that you would have, right? It would hide the holes.
Chapman, Bichette.
There you go.
Horwitz, Snyder at second base. Pardon me, I'm forgetting. Well, now, of course, if you get Chapman, you don't sign IKF. But if you could sign IKF, Chapman, Bichette,
there's your second
IKF.
Baseman. Man.
And
cooking with gravy. Boy.
And Vladdy, Spencer Horwitz DHing is a lefty component of your DH. Anyhow,
I could stick Horwitz in left if I had to.
I just wondered if, although I'm hoping, just let him be the second baseman, let him run with it, stick him in the 8th spot against left, whatever you want to do. Let him be the second baseman.
Put him in the 2-hole, leave him there.
Put him in the 2.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have any problem. Lefty's in the 2-hole. If he's against a tough lefty, he's still going to see a lot of pitches. Maybe he moves the ball.
You see his at-bats the way he goes the other way. He hits velocity.
He doesn't seem to
doesn't have an obvious hole. He don't mind the ball up.
So I just figured I'd throw that out about Matt Chapman, though.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know where you start. That's the thing, right? And maybe they knew something about their team before we knew it.
Would you rather have Matt Chapman than Justin Turner in your team?
Yes. I told you, we knew this coming in, right? If you're going to get rid of the Chapmans of the world, because you don't want to pay him as much as his agent wanted the Blue Jays to pay him, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they were shooting for the moon, and that's what his job is. But if they were going to bring in Turner, you needed 2 Turners. Chapman can't be a Turner and an IKF. I mean, IKF having a tremendous year.
We're led to believe that Chapman wasn't going to sign here for what the Giants gave.
Whatever. It was $19 million.
He's going to need more than that.
Absolutely.
To get it done here.
Yeah.
But, I find myself wondering about it. And we know what Matt Chapman is, but I'd take that right now.
Change the way to change their season? He's here?
I think they'd be closer to 5. Maybe he's worth an extra win or two. Maybe the defense. Maybe he's worth an extra win or two. Change the season.
See, I don't think the defense at third base has anything to do with.
I was going to say
no.
I was about to get around to that. Mm-hmm. No more than if this was the bullpen they were still running out. I don't think.
How many stakes you got? 42 or something.
42.
You stick those 42 hitting cleanup for the Jays.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an intriguing question. We'll never know the answer because he ain't coming back. But yeah, I don't know. It's he's a good 7-hole hitter on a good team. That's what he is.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He's a really good defender.
He can't be your.
I think when you had the hand problem and the finger problem and the things he was trying to do to compensate for that, getting around the ball a little bit more, and the ball wasn't going in the glove the way he wanted it to go in the glove, and
you really got the sense.
Then the defense was not as good, and the Khakis didn't like him as much defensively.
You got the sense at the end of the year that he was kind of.
He'd had as many conversations with the front office as they could have, I think, and it was time to go. So.
And I think he. I think he probably realized long before he became a free agent that he wasn't going to come back here. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting contemplating that, and the importance of that defense at third base. Anyhow.
Yeah, see, what it would have been was if they would have spent all their money on Matt Chapman and not went out and got anything else. And then everybody would have been yelling and screaming because they're bringing back the exact same team. That's the thing, right? That they needed a guy. you need a guy and Matt Chapman, hey, more power to you. But it was never going to happen that way. So, what did we learn today?
What did we learn today?
Skeens is starting the All-Star game? Yeah. You're a beauty. You're all right, beauty.
9:45 is the first pitch tonight, 9 o'clock pregame show on Fan 590. We'll be around tomorrow from 4 to 6 Eastern. We got a good show lined up. Going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the baseball.